This video is a bit personal. This is about probably one of the lowest moments in my teaching career, which also turned out to be a moment which helped me evolve into a much better teacher. So in that sense, it's like a bittersweet memory. This is about a child who had joined my class. In personal conversation, he was a really sweet child, but in just the classroom experience, it was really hard to get through to him. He was very hyperactive, and also at times he was very distracted. He used to make comments in the class, very random tangential comments, and he was trying to be sweet and wanted to be heard, but somehow I just didn't know what to do at that moment. And 1 month kind of passes by and I'm still struggling to figure out what to do exactly. And finally, the parents took the child out of my class saying that the child has ADHD. And I was like heartbroken. If you're a teacher watching this, and you can totally understand that, hey, how this is one of the most important things or most personal things for a teacher. And I was even sad that I wasn't informed about this before the child joined, because I could have done something about it, that if I knew what is wrong. And I was even, worse, much more sad because of the fact that I got to know that 10% of the kids in the world have ADHD, somewhere around 10%. That means if you are teaching a class of 20 kids, probably 1 or 2 kids would likely have ADHD or would be hyperactive in the class. If not this year, by some luck, maybe next year, highly likely, maybe the year next to that. And that just makes being ready for this scenario a lot more important and a lot more worthy of training, which I did not get. So I was like, wait, how is this happening? And therefore, this video is about that. How to teach kids so they can focus. In this video, we'll talk about how to confirm whether the child is hyperactive. Because if you are able to confirm, that would give you a lot more tools to be able to help and support the kid. We'll also talk about how to empathize with the child, because you can't begin to solution the problem unless you empathize with the solution. Here, we are talking about humans, right? And to empathize, we'll talk about the brain science. These are the topics. We'll quickly cover them. I'll just summarize. And we'll also talk about what are the experiences, what are the emotions that kids on ADHD spectrum or kids who are hyperactive actually feel and go through. We will talk about one technique, which is how to lesson plan actually, so that kids are able to focus. And I'll also give you a ChatGPT link so that you can just put your lesson plan over there, and it can help and guide and tell you what are the things that you can implement to actually make your lesson plan even better. All right. There are some other techniques which are coming from behavior science, which we will talk about in future videos. So in case you haven't subscribed, do subscribe. All right. So if you're still watching this video, then likely is the case that you have a child in your class who is either hyperactive or is a lot more distracted, and you want to know how to help this child. Well, the first thing could be that, hey, confirm whether the child has ADHD. Talk to the parents, and if the child is already diagnosed, then the psychiatrist might have already given a list of recommendations to take care of. And that is going to be super helpful for you, because now you can begin to, work on things that are going to help the child a lot more in the class, right? So that's why you need that. And in case the parents don't have this analysis, right, then what you can do is, first of all, check whether do you think that, hey, the child is having ADHD, like, are you getting some red flags? Now, here are some symptoms that you can look out for. You can pause the video over here and then read through the symptoms. Now, if you have already done that, then I know you would be thinking about a question that, Ram, aren't all kids having these kind of symptoms? Does that mean that all of them have ADHD? Well, actually, no. Fair question. Even I had the same question when I saw this for the first time. Well, psychologists are looking for 6 of these symptoms to be at the extreme level where it starts impacting the students' academic life and social life. For example, even I used to make careless mistakes in my maths class, and my teachers were like, hey, why are you making these mistakes? You know the concept. I know that you know the concept, but I still have to cut marks because you didn't write the steps clearly. You made this silly mistake over here. Look at this. And I was like, oh, damn. But making silly mistakes, making careless mistakes did not impact my understanding of the concept. It just impacted getting few marks less, which is fine. So that's what I mean by, these symptoms. If you are able to find at least 6 of these symptoms which is at the level where you feel like his academic life or his or her academic life is being impacted, or social life. If the child is like really hyperactive, they might not be able to gel well with other kids in the class, and therefore their social life might get impacted because of this, right? And if you're seeing many symptoms to this level, that will be a good sign to actually talk to the parent and try to get the child evaluated. Now, I know there's a social stigma attached to this kind of a thing, and parents do start getting emotional about it. I know where they're coming from, but at the same time, it's important to let them understand what you see and how you perceive this. I personally see this as going to a pharmacist or going to a hospital and getting a blood test done to check whether I have sugar or not. And if I do, then there are certain techniques and things I have to do. I have to make certain changes to my lifestyle, and I have to have some medication if required, which can improve my life. The same thing is applicable over here. If we get to know that the child is on the spectrum, the psychologist will be able to recommend certain next actions which would improve the life of the child, and also give next actions to the parents and the teachers, so that collectively as a society, as a group, we can help the child have a much better lifestyle compared to if this goes undiagnosed, right? So that's why it's much more important to get to know in case you are having those doubts. Now you're ready to help your kids who are hyperactive or distracted. Well, the first and the foremost thing will be to empathize with them. Because if you still keep on blaming the child for all the issues that they're creating, or blaming yourself or your bad luck for having the child over, then it's not going to be helpful. Anything that I say or anything that I teach you, train you for, it's not going to be helpful. And therefore, trying to understand that why this is happening and being able to empathize with the child will make you a lot more successful. So let's do that. For that, we'll need to do two things. One, know the brain science. And second, know the experiences of an ADHD child from their point of view, know their emotions. First, the brain science. I'll keep it short. Well, there are mostly three big things that we know about the ADHD brain. First point is TPN versus DMN. Basically, your brain, your neural network works in these two modes. Let's say when you're focused on certain task, right? Let's say you are trying to learn about fractions. Then your memories of fractions, like, hey, what is fraction? What is LCM? All those things. Those neural networks which are storing these memories that are relevant for what you're understanding, they will become active. As you can see over here, in the TPN mode, only the networks that are relevant for the task, they are active. This means you are focused at learning one thing. This mode is called task positive network. Now, when you are, not focused, when you are like taking a walk in the park, or when you are just taking a shower, your mind is just rushing through multiple thoughts at the same time. You're even thinking about your pet dog, or maybe you're thinking about what's there for dinner, or maybe you're thinking about, hey, what should I wear for the party? Random thoughts are popping in your head. That's called default mode network. You're not focused at one thought, but multiple thoughts are popping up in your brain at the same time, right? And in a neurotypical brain that does not have ADHD, there is a switch. Either you are in TPN network or you are in DMN network. All right. So your brain keeps on switching between these two networks. Whereas in an ADHD kid, now this switch is faulty, because of which both of these networks are active at the same time. Now, this basically means that when you're trying to teach the kid about fraction, their neural networks of fractions are also active, along with the neural network of what actually is going to be there for dinner today, what's going to happen in my storybook that I'm going to be reading. They are not trying to be distracted, but it is happening to them and they can't help it. So that's point number one. And because of this, if you're trying to help them out, you will have to quickly or constantly keep bringing them back, keep bringing their attention back. Blaming them is not going to be helpful. Now, next is the dopamine circuits. Well, what we have seen is that in ADHD brain, right, the dopamine levels could be lesser compared to a neurotypical brain. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, neurochemical. It does multiple things, like, it helps you focus, it helps you in attention, it helps you in time perception, many other things. But because focus and attention we spoke about, right? So a kid who has higher level of dopamine would be able to focus a lot more on the task at hand, whereas a kid who has less amount of dopamine would not be able to focus a lot more. In simple terms, this is what or how it happens. And therefore, that's another reason why ADHD kids cannot actually help themselves to focus on your lecture. And therefore, you might have to kind of like make your lectures a lot more hooky, a lot more exciting compared to, just having boring lectures. Maybe do hands-on activities, maybe do project-based learning. All of those aspects could be a lot more helpful, specifically for the kids who are, having ADHD or who are having attention deficit or are hyperactive, right? Now, the third thing is prefrontal cortex. What we have found out is that in kids with ADHD, prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain, is slightly smaller than the neurotypical kids. Now, prefrontal cortex, remind you, is responsible for executive function. It is responsible for how we learn, for emotion regulation, and so many other things. And that's why you might see that, kids with ADHD have a hard time with emotion regulation. They throw more tantrums, maybe. Also, they have hard time learning some new things. And that's where the cognitive load theory comes in. So let's go into that for a moment. Cognitive load theory. Well, this tries to talk about how the brain learns. More importantly, what's the mental effort that is required to process new information and therefore learn and understand it. So it says that, your brain, first of all, takes in information through your sense organs, like your eyes and your ears. It's listening to the lecture, it's seeing things written on the blackboard and things like that. Now, that information goes on a working memory. All right. Now, this is where the information will get processed. And then from there, the information goes to your long-term memory. All right. Once it gets processed, it's understood. Then it's like, it's a filing cabinet where it's like, okay, cool. This is fractions information and this lives in maths cabinet along with number line and decimals and things like that. All right. Your working memory is the bottleneck. See, a lot of information can come through your eyes and ears, yes, but your working memory can at a time only support 3 to 5 new pieces of information, and they only can be processed together. All right, so that's the bottleneck over there. In fact, for kids who have ADHD, this is found to be smaller compared to neurotypical kids. All right, and that is one of the reasons why we have to manage the cognitive load, the effort that the brain has to put in to understand a particular new concept that we are trying to teach. And focus on the keyword manage and not reduce. We don't have to reduce the effort because some effort is much more important and we should in fact increase it and ensure that that happens a lot more compared to some other effort. All right, so let's see what are the different types of efforts. First is intrinsic cognitive load. This basically means that how naturally something is complex to understand. For example, if you're trying to teach kids how to add fractions, unlike fractions with different denominators, 4 by 5 plus 2 by 3, to be able to do this, to be able to understand this, kids need to know what fractions are, by the way. What is LCM, how to take that, what is equivalent fraction, and how fractions are added, and so many other things. So this itself, you can see that, there are so many new pieces. And if a child has not understood them, not mastered them, not put them together, then it's going to be a really hard time for the child to actually try to understand, because 4 new pieces, and that too, they all are interdependent on each other. So that is directly going to overload your working memory. All right. So this is not something that you should reduce, but this is something that you should manage. That is the recommendation over here. Manage the intrinsic cognitive load. How? Well, you can have micro lessons. You don't have to create mega lessons where you have to teach every single thing like how I'm trying to do in this video. Please don't take this as an example. But micro lessons, maybe just one lesson on just talking about what fractions are and making sure that kids really understand it well, specifically if you have kids who are on the ADHD spectrum, all right? Then you can even try to chunk them. As you saw in the previous example, fractions and equivalent fractions and LCM, all of these things are interdependent on each other. But if a child has not understood how they are related and how they can be stored together, for that child, even though they might have understood these concepts independently, I know fractions, I know LCM, I don't know how these two things are related. So for them, these two informations would occupy 2 separate places in the working memory. But for a child who knows how these pieces, how these content pieces are related to each other, they all are going to kind of like take just one space, one working memory. So help the kids kind of chunk the information into, one place. Also check their prior knowledge. Do they have the prior knowledge for the lesson that they are going to take? If not, definitely ensure that, hey, that prior knowledge has been checked and, made solid first. Next type of cognitive load is extraneous cognitive load. Now, this is the mental effort that is spent because the lesson plan was poorly designed. For example, let's say if you're listening to this video and this video has loud party background music, then you'll not be able to focus on what I'm saying and trying to understand that really well, right? So that's poor design of the video. Let's say you might have seen books where, there are images and then there are text beside it explaining what the image is, what are the different parts of the image. Let's say there is a, image of a flower and you're trying to understand the parts and function of a flower. And the one side is image, one side is the text. Now compare that versus there's a book called Head First series. Okay. They will not do something like this. They will have image and on top of that, they will write things like, hey, this is the part, this is the function, this is the part, this is the function. They will not be concerned about how well it is designed or how good this looks. They will be a lot more concerned about reducing the extraneous cognitive load and making students understand. So you can see that, how these techniques can help you design better. So here, the recommendation is to minimize extraneous cognitive load as much as possible. For this, you'll have to learn a little bit about multimedia design, which, would make it a lot better. But even if you don't have this, you can just take a call on whether there are some extraneous cognitive load that you are implementing in your lesson plan and then just remove it. Now, next is germane cognitive load. Now, this is super important. This is something that we want. We want the students to have this cognitive load, put this mental effort, because this ensures that the information is well understood and therefore moved in the long-term memory. All right. So what you do with this is, here at the end of the lesson, always check for students' understanding. Have all the kids understood the concept? Maybe do a mini quiz. Maybe ask them to, reflect on their learning, on their skills. Help them organize. Maybe ask them to make a mind map of what all we have studied so far and how are these things related to each other. Maybe they learned about first law of Newton, second law, third law, but how are these all things related to each other? That would help them organize the information a lot better. And instead of storing first law, second law, third law as 3 different pieces of information, they will be able to organize all of these things together into one bundle. And next time when they use Newton's laws to understand something else, instead of that occupying multiple spaces of their working memory, like 1, 2, 3 law, each occupying separate spaces of the working memory, it'll all occupy just one space. So do those kind of things at the end, give much more importance and much more weightage to reflection, checking for understanding, organizing information, to actually ensuring the knowledge has moved to the long-term memory, because that's what we want. We don't want students to just understand and be done with it, but actually remember and be able to transfer. And for that, long-term memory is important. So by now you understand a little bit of brain science of ADHD brains. And hopefully this is helping you empathize a little bit with the kids that, hey, they're not trying to ignore you or be hyperactive and interrupt you, but that's how their brain is functioning. They are not aware of it. And maybe making them aware is also the first step. But hopefully this is going to reduce a lot of your frustration. And also we saw some techniques that can actually help in doing better lesson planning, and this will come back later on. But the next step is to, also know about their experiences and emotions. And as much as I tried to actually, summarize this in my own words, I realized that, hey, I'm not the best person to do this because I don't have ADHD, and, I myself am not able to fully 100% empathize with the folks who are experiencing this. And that's why I would highly recommend watching this video by Jessica. To the teachers of ADHD students, how can I help? So Jessica has been struggling with ADHD, and she has made a mission of her life. Her life's mission is basically to kind of like help other people who are suffering with ADHD and help educate the teachers who have to help kids who are having ADHD. And in this video, to the teachers of ADHD students, she has beautifully summarized her own experiences and emotions that she went through about learning things while battling or while being challenged with ADHD, right? And I couldn't, after watching this video, I was like, I definitely cannot summarize this better than her. I myself had tears in my eyes after looking at this video, and therefore I would highly recommend to watch this to be able to empathize a lot more with the kids. And with this, we can move on to the next step, which is technique number 1, how to lesson plan so kids can focus. And there are other techniques also, but in this particular video, we'll only focus on this particular technique because, again, prefrontal cortex is small. I don't want to overload your prefrontal cortex, your working memory, with a lot of new pieces of information. All right. So here it goes. Step number 1, beginning of the lesson. What should you do? Point number 1, micro lessons. As we saw that the working memory is small, please do not create or plan like macro lessons where like multiple objectives are there. Have like micro lessons specifically focusing on like as less number of skills or knowledge pieces as possible. Maybe even one, like just focusing on one particular learning objective per lesson is gonna be the most important part. Second part is engaging activities. So we already talked about that dopamine is something that helps focus, whereas kids with ADHD might have less dopamine, and therefore for them focusing on boring lectures is not going to be an easy part compared to their counterparts, right? And therefore try your best to create engaging lesson plans using techniques of project-based learning or phenomena-based learning, like showing them exciting experiments or exciting phenomena that are happening, having interesting hooks. These are things that will motivate them intrinsically to actually be excited about the topic and focus at the topic. Please do not go towards game mechanics, game-based education, or towards chocolate-covered broccoli. Don't include these things. These are very easy for new teachers to actually fall victim to, fall prey to. Every new teacher kind of like, hey, why not we include some game mechanics and gamify the whole learning process and all. That takes away the motivation from being intrinsic, like actually liking the subject and doing it for that reason, towards something that is external, something that is extrinsic. And therefore in the longer run you would see that kids are not liking maths, they're just liking getting those points. And after a while they have grown up, and then these points don't make sense anymore to them, and therefore they're like, you know what, I don't want to learn maths, this is not my jam. But that is basically you seeing the long-term effects of gamification, right? We can maybe talk a lot more in a future video about this, like what is gamification and how not to do this. But yeah, you have been warned. Third point is making learning visible. So kids with ADHD, right? They do get distracted quite a lot. And one of the things that can help them come back and always know where they are is, if before you start the chapter, you can just put on your blackboard that these are the topics, these are the 4 topics that we are going to be covering in this chapter, or before the project begins, you can show them a short UBD about, hey, these are the things that we are going to be tackling in this particular project. And as you progress, you keep on checking them off, so they are also getting excited and they are on track and they are like completely motivated towards finishing things off. Even you can do this at a daily level. Before you begin the lesson of the day, you list out that, hey, today we're going to be doing 2 things. One is, first I'll give you a small lecture or show you a video, and then we'll do a small group discussion on our concept. And then the next 15 minutes we'll work on some practice questions. All right. That's what the lay of the land is. And as you progress, you keep checking them off in front of them. So that helps them be aligned with, what's happening and keep coming back to the class. All right. Last point is activate prior knowledge. As I told you that, hey, working memory is small, right? So if you assumed that what you're going to be teaching today has these prior knowledge, like I'm going to be teaching fractions, adding unlike fractions, and this has these 4 prior knowledge, but I've already taught them before and my kids have mastered them. So, they already know this. And if you're wrong, if your kids have not actually mastered them, if your kids have not actually moved those knowledge pieces in the long-term memory, then that all those 4 things are going to be new for them, and that will take up a lot of working memory, and therefore they will not be able to understand. So always before beginning topic, check for what are the new formulas or terms, definitions, words that are required for understanding this particular new concept. And have my kids understood this? Do I really know this? Am I 100% sure about this? If not, do a quick quiz to check students' prior knowledge and activate the prior knowledge. Okay, hey, this is what you're going to be needing, folks, for understanding today. And checking and activation, these both things are going to be super helpful for minimizing the intrinsic cognitive load, managing the intrinsic cognitive load, and making it super easy for them to actually do the germane cognitive load and learn the new content. All right, now let's talk about what to do during the lesson. First, plan for short learning pomodoros. If your class is like 40 minutes long or 1 hour long, instead of lesson planning for the entire 40 minutes or entire 1 hour, break into small chunks that, hey, 15 minutes we'll learn and then probably a couple of minutes of break, and then 15 minutes again we'll learn, and then a couple of minutes of movement breaks is something that I will give. So plan your lesson plan in this Pomodoro fashion. All right. Would help the kids actually make sense that, hey, the whole class is divided into 3 Pomodoros. So, I just have to focus for like 10 minutes. So small time that they have to focus for, and then get up and move. Specifically helpful for kids who are having ADHD and then, they're hyperactive. They can't just sit in one place for long, and therefore this will help them actually know that 10 minutes, that's it. And then I'll get to move. I'll get to do something else. I'll get to take a break. Attention grabbers at Pomodoro start. Begin the Pomodoro by, having an attention grabber that, hey, okay, everybody eyes on me, 1, 2, 3 eyes on me. And there are like multiple attention grabbers that, hey, everybody just get up, get your hands up, just loosen up, and then sit down. Or box breathing. Multiple techniques are available. Just grab their attention, because we talked about the DMN and TPN. So this is where it helps, making the kids sure that, hey, you know what, okay, cool, they are completely like on task right now. It might not completely prevent the faulty switch between TPN and DMN, but it would help at least not get distracted. And this, you might have to do it quite multiple times. So maybe for the kids who are having ADHD, you can go near them and, silently, without telling the entire class, you can just tap on their desk and make them focus if you notice that they are being distracted right now. All right. So attention grabbers, yes. Clarify the do's and don'ts. So if you're doing an activity, let them know, hey, how the activity is supposed to be done. If this is a new activity type, let's say you're taking them on a new platform like Khan Academy and they have never been on Khan Academy, show them that this is what it will look like. Or if it's PhD, then, hey, you might see these many buttons over here. You don't have to click these many buttons. Just focus on this area and do this. So first time user experience is something that all good games provide. And this is the reason why they do that, because they don't want their users to be like, oh my God, there are so many things to do and be just confused by it. So do that. Also, not only to do with how to do an activity, but also to do with behaviors. Clarify the do's and don'ts of that. Let them know that, hey, for the next activity, I want you to talk silently with your partner, listen to them actively what they are saying, and then summarize what they are saying. All right. I don't want you to be thinking about your own thoughts or not listening clearly and doing some scribbling on the side. No, just focus on what they're listening, what they're talking about. So do's and don'ts of how to do an activity and how to behave during an activity. That if you make it clear, and it hardly takes a minute to actually do that before an activity begins. So before a Pomodoro of like 10-15 minutes, just do this once and then go ahead. Quick movement breaks, I already spoke about at the end of the Pomodoro, do that. Predictable lesson structures. So it's basically like, let's say if you had, in a newspaper, you always know which page is the sports section and you can quickly go towards it. Imagine if the newspaper kept on changing their format every single day. The sports sometimes is on the first page or on the third page or on the last page. And you're like, hey, every single time it changes, then you would not know where to find it easily. And it's not a big deal, is what you might be thinking. Of course, it's not a big deal. But as I spoke about, working memory is limited. Of course, it's much more limited for people who have ADHD. And therefore, even things like these, things not being predictable, which could have been predictable. Like, hey, you know what? The lesson starts with prior knowledge check. Lesson ends with celebration. It's a Pomodoro section. Every 10 minutes we take a break. And it always goes in that particular order. So if the lesson structure is predictable, it definitely reduces a little bit of cognitive load for the kids. All right. So this is, it helps reduce extraneous cognitive load. Next thing is predictable routines. So there are like multiple routines. For example, if you want everybody to be thinking about a particular topic, right? One of the routines is think, pair, share. That hey, you pair two people, you form small groups and tell them that hey, you know what, why don't you all discuss among the small group, and then from each small group, I'll ask one child. Now there are many such routines. Now, if every single time we are introducing a new routine, that's going to be challenging for the kids because hey, every single time you introduce something new, they have to learn the rules again. What am I supposed to do? What are the do's and don'ts? Every single time you have to keep on iterating. But once, if you have a smaller set of routines and you're like, oh cool, I'm just going to be using this, it makes the kids' life much more easier because they're like, you know what, think, pair, share. I know what to do in think, pair, share. You don't have to tell me, but even if you tell me that's fine, right? So that's the power of predictable routines. It reduces extraneous cognitive load. Give thinking time. So this is something I've called out separately. I mean, there are a lot of facilitation techniques, but this one is a really powerful one, and one thing that is commonly mistaken by teachers. We ask a question, and immediately some kid would raise their hand that, sir, I know the answer, and then like, fine, you tell me, and everybody else has just given up hope that, oh my god, the game was not even designed, it was rigged for me to actually fail. So that's not being fair. You give a question or give a task and you give them appropriate time to think. You give them waiting time and tell them, hey, nobody's going to raise their hand in this particular time. I'm not going to talk to anybody. I'm not going to listen to answer from anybody until the clock hits 3 minutes. Everybody has 3 minute thinking time. And then you pick whom you want to talk to. All right. So give thinking time. Maintain lower noise levels. I mean, extraneous cognitive load is something that could be reduced by doing this. So these are the things to work on during the lesson. Quickly talking about end of the lesson. So definitely end the lesson by checking the understanding of the students. Have they understood the knowledge that we were supposed to understand today? Have they understood the skill that we were trying to practice today? Maybe give everybody a quick one small question and see if everybody has done the right steps or somebody is missing that. Maybe help them by doing a quick think, pair, share and explain to the partner, and the partner can raise their hand and say that, hey, my team needs some attention. And that would help you in the longer term. You would not have a huge pile of backlog for a particular child, and therefore in future when that prior knowledge is going to be important, the child will already know that or will have strong foundation, right? So do that. And finally, definitely appreciate and celebrate at the end. This makes the whole learning process a lot more enjoyable, joyful, and definitely appreciate the kid who has ADHD a lot more, because sadly, unfortunately, these kids are the ones who, kind of get a lot more constructive criticism a lot more, because they are prone to doing a lot of mistakes, and many people do not understand how to deal with this, and therefore they kind of like, hey, criticize them quite often. And making them feel appreciated, celebrated is gonna be making their day. So definitely do that. Lastly, I have on this information, I have built a GPT agent that can help you. Actually, all you have to do is basically go to this GPT agent. I would link this in the description of this video, and it'll ask you some simple questions like, hey, how many kids do you have, what's the topic, and if there is an ADHD case, then what is that like, describe it, learning objectives. Just answer some of the simple questions and it'll give you a lesson plan, and or it'll help improve your lesson plan such that these tips that we spoke about are embedded in it. And now that you've understood these tips, you will be able to correct GPT, because right now when I'm making this video, GPT is not that great, still makes mistakes. You'll be surprised. Yes. So with this knowledge, you'll be able to improve your design a lot more. One thing to keep in mind is that, hey, you don't have to implement all of these techniques in your lesson plan. Do not change the way you lesson plan. All right. Your current way might be that, hey, I know what is good for my students. I know what the topic is. I have some exciting things to do with the kids over here. Please go ahead and still follow the same process. Just that at the end, have one quick check. Hey, is there something that you can do to improve this lesson plan or help your kids focus better? Don't implement all the tips that I've shown you over here, but maybe just couple of them. Just start with a couple of them and see if those are working, if those are being helpful for your kids. All right. Hope you found this video helpful. Hope this actually improves your lesson planning and therefore improves the experience of your kids who are a lot more hyperactive or inattentive. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with other teachers who might find this helpful, and other students and parents who might be able to share this with other teachers of theirs. And subscribe for more such content.